Okay, I want to talk about something that's I think important in the script, and you'll notice if you read it that alcoholism is very closely related, and drug abuse is very closely related to bipolar disorder, and I think a little too closely related. I think people just kind of lump the two together sometimes, and they pass off, bipolar people as just being alcoholics. And I think it's important to separate the two. And I think, Carrie, I read an article and something that you said, and that you said that bipolar, people, they're two different things, and people need to become sober before they even address bipolar, because it's a whole nother ball game once you become sober, because drug abuse and alcoholism mask everything, the bipolar issues, and so that's very, very true, and the public lumps them all together, and I think it's important to separate the two, and people understand that they're two different things, two different challenges. And for bipolar people and people with mental illness to understand that they're two different things, and for them to address their issues with mental illness, they first have to address their issues with alcohol or drugs or whatever it might be. And so I've just separated the two in the script, and I made it, so Ryan was actually clean when he went into this whole thing. Then he had his challenge with alcohol later, but I wanted people to see that Ryan, he had these problems despite, and he was crazy and his life was a disaster, even though he was sober. That is still a very, it's a terrible, terrible thing for people to deal with, whether they're sober or not, and it's compounded with drug abuse, and it makes it so much more worse, that drug abuse and alcoholism. Now, another reason I did that was because the truth of me is actually I wasn't an alcoholic. I actually grew up, I'm Mormon, and so I grew up in a home that we don't drink, and so not that I've not, but I grew up scared to death. Even though I'm Mormon, I have alcoholism. A lot of my family members don't really. They're not. Some of them aren't Mormon. A lot of them aren't active in the church, and so. I grew up in this family that had a lot of drug abuse, heroin addiction, cocaine addiction, alcoholism, and I was surrounded with that, and it scared me to death at a very early age. And plus, the pressure to not do that in my essential family kept me away from getting there, and which was a blessing to me, because I know that if I had dealt in that with the severity of my condition, I wouldn't be alive. If I had been under the influence in front of that train, I wouldn't have gotten off the tracks. I would have died. And so it's been a real blessing in my life to not have to deal with that like other people have. And my heart totally goes out for people that have to deal with those problems on top if they're bipolar. It's I can't imagine having to deal with that on top of it. Like I said, it would have killed me. And I did self-medicate. I wasn't diagnosed for a long time. I just was totally, I didn't know what was going on, and I hid it, and from everybody, and I didn't know what was going on. So it took me a long time to get diagnosed. And I did self-medicate, but in a different way than most people do. I would take sleeping pills, and I would, go and when I was fired from my jobs, I'd hide from my wife, and I'd go sleep in a car all day long. Knock myself out with sleeping pills, and then I'd wake up in the evening, time to go home, and I would take stimulants, caffeine, and stuff. Heavy-duty doses of caffeine and stuff to bring myself up. And I did that forever, a long, long time. And so I did self-medicate, but not in the way, in the severe way that others do. But I want people to understand that there's a difference between the two. I think that's a very important message, and that's one of the things I've tried to build into the script, to separate the two and educate people on both of them at the same time, and understand there's a difference. So that's another way that my experience differs from Ryan's, but I put that in there a little bit the way I did it, but I wanted to put in that he was an alcoholic too, because that's very common, and it's what most people experience, and I wanted to address that challenge as well. So that's kind of the way that kind of plays out. So sorry, I got a little emotional there. Thanks.